It's such a, reliable person. I mean, it's one of the reasons, primary reason is that he was a great bass player and enormously flexible. I mean, he could do it. During the time when there was all this jingle business and all the stuff that musicians in New York were involved in, he was so much in demand that he kept two basses, and he had a guy whom he hired just to, when he had a recording session or a jingle session, and he had another appointment the same day, and it was some distance, and you had to take a cab or whatever. He had a guy who worked for him who would bring the other bass to the studio where he was recording next. So he would wouldn't have to have the bass, he would leave the other bass in safe, surroundings. So he was a busy man. But Milt was, he was with Louis for a while, with the All-Stars. And he told me an interesting story. I think it's in the interview that we did with him. Because the common thing is that they say, oh, Louis said that, the All-Stars were run by Joe Glaser, and they say that about his big band too, that he didn't really, he was just the front man. That's absolute nonsense, because I think I told the story about how he hired Dexter Gordon. There was things that I want you in my band, and he didn't ask anybody. That was the big band. So anyway, with Milt, when they went to Glaser's office to discuss Milt's hiring, Milt asked for a certain amount of money, and Glaser said, oh, that's too much, and Louis said, give it to him. But he said it's like that, and Joe did it. So, the idea that Louis was some kind of, ventriloquist dummy for Joe Glaser is totally idiotic. But Milt was, he had great recall, and he was a fountainhead of information. I think he's the only one who has a double interview in that series. And he was also an interviewer. He was on the NEA panel, and he and I were co-chairs for a while. And he was wonderful to be with. He was so great when, and this would happen, that there were disputes at the panel meetings. He was a great diplomat at, there would be peace and order very quickly. He was a marvelous person. And his autobiography is great. It's full of stuff. But I had the pleasure of one of the few cruises I was ever on. I was on a cruise with Milt, so we had a chance to hang. Because he was so busy, I had a chance to hang out with him. He was a lovely man. The last time I saw him was not long before he died. And I went with Darryl because I couldn't have done it on my own. He was still in the house. He had a leg amputated, and that was the day. And I thought, it would be difficult to see him in that condition, and that. So I went with Darryl. And the thing was, he came out in a wheelchair, but he was really obviously concerned with us more than himself, sensing that we would be, uncomfortable. So he immediately let us know that he was still his old self. He made some kind of joke, and so we had a great time with him. He was a wonderful person, and that's why, he was loved by everyone. He was just, and needless to say, I mean, he was, what a player, yeah. Any context. Milt and Cozy, of course, were teammates in the Calloway band, and Milt was as Dizzy says, you know, he and Dizzy, when they were working in some place where they had a week-long or several days, that they would usually go up, it was a hotel or something, go up on the roof, and Dizzy and Milt would practice together, and that's when Milt says how Dizzy taught him some of those, you know, interesting harmonic things that Dizzy had this harmonic mind that was amazing. Yeah, that's how he became a creator of bebop. But Milt was a progressive guy in that band. Apparently some of the other older guys were not. Cozy is on some early bebop recordings, like Sid Catlett, you know. And but apparently some of the others, now the so-called autobiography of Dizzy's, it's much better than the so-called autobiography by Miles Davis, which is totally a waste of time. But the guy who did it, the journalist, he came to the Institute, I can't think of his name, but he says that he quotes Dizzy as saying that some of the older guys in the band, you know, were you know, standoffish about what he was trying to do with the modern stuff. You know, Picking the Cabbage, which is an arrangement that he did for Calloway that was recorded, is harmonically advanced, as they used to say. But I always felt that it would be very unlikely. I mean, he even says something about Chu Berry being one of those. Now, first of all, there wasn't that much difference in age. I mean, but of course, Chu was well established. But I can't imagine that Chu would have been in any way hostile to what Dizzy was trying to do, unless it was a personality thing, because Chu was so, you know, he was so advanced himself. I mean, he was one of the most important tenor stylists of the day. And somebody, I may have said this already, but somebody who was really highly respected by Coleman Hawkins, who had a fairly narrow range of tenor players that he admired. But that was such a tragedy. And that was when he was on the road with Calloway that he got killed. And I was thinking the other day, more musicians died in car accidents than any drugs. You know, if you talk about how many people overdosed and all that, it's really minimal compared to all the road kills. So many. Fortunately, that's, you know, that is pretty much over. But Cozy was a real master of drum technique, and he knew everything that you could know about percussion instruments and about, you know, the various skins and the sizes of cymbals and all. Drummers are really interesting because they're into that, and they have more equipment-related stuff than any other musician. I mean, if you're a trumpet player, you know what, you know, get yourself a Selmer or whatever, you know. The trumpet players have things with mouthpieces, and reed players have things with reeds, but drummers have all this stuff that they need. And it's especially with cymbals. I remember when somebody told Mel Lewis had a Chinese cymbal that he absolutely loved, and some idiot stole it from him. And I remember what that meant to him. I mean, it was really like losing a relative, or worse.